Welcome to Cyclone InCYders. Yes, we're back after quite a long time. Little bit of a delay, break gets us sometimes, and we just traveling all, and it's hard to get us all together. But we're back today. A lot has happened in that time span. Most importantly, Iowa State football with a huge Fiesta Bowl win over Oregon. We're gonna cover that. Rewind the season a little bit, even talk about that Oklahoma game, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about the start of the men's basketball and women's basketball season. So we'll cover that next on Cyclone InCYders. Welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. So yeah, Iowa State football team, huge win over Oregon in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. But before we talk about that game, we're going to rewind it to the Oklahoma Conference Championship. Iowa State loses a close one, and they had it on the final drive, but just couldn't quite make the comeback. What were you guys' feelings on that loss, and just some general feedback?
So I guess first off, I think Isheem Young's ejection was absolute garbage, and that definitely had an impact on the game. It reminded me of Willie Harvey a couple years ago against Washington State. And obviously that kind of sucked more because he was a senior, but just kind of set the tone the rest of the game. And then, they got in a hole, and they showed a lot of resilience. They were able to come back down 24-7 at halftime, and the defense was really able to keep them in it. Offense showed a little bit of life and only lost by 3. But it really hurt because I think it was a very winnable game. I think if we were ever going to go 2-0 against Oklahoma, there's a chance next year, but I think Oklahoma is going to be better next year, just like Iowa State is going to be. So I think this was the year to go 2-0 against them. But I expect us to be back in the Big 12 championship next year. Hopefully we can get revenge. But yeah, it just hurts because some mistakes in the first half kind of put us behind, and then it was a winnable game, but just coming up short at the end kind of stung. But obviously the Fiesta Bowl kind of made the end of the season feel a lot better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Aaron. I think overall Oklahoma was simply the better team that day. I mean, they held Brees to just under 80 yards, and Purdy unfortunately threw 3 INTs, one late in the game, which I wanted to rip my hair out because I thought we were going to secure the comeback, but.
Yeah, I think that the Oklahoma definitely came in knowing what our game plan was, obviously feeding Brees. And like you said, Max, he had his season low of 79 rushing yards. While Brock Purdy did have over 300 yards passing, he also had 3 interceptions. And the Oklahoma defense only had 3 sacks on him when, honestly, they could have had a lot more. Also, 5 tackles for loss, and obviously those 3 interceptions did not help us at all. But I think it was definitely a learning experience for the whole team, and Brock definitely showed some more confidence in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, you guys all – I mean, Aaron, first of all, with the Isheem Young thing, 100% agree. I mean, that could be – this is a topic for another day, but just the whole targeting rule sometimes, I think a lot of people have issues with it, and the NCAA might want to look at adjusting that in the future because, I mean, there's huge games, even in the national championship. You got guys going out in the first quarter that they didn't mean to hit that guy that way, and it's just like – it's really tough and puts your team in a bad position when you lose an impact player like that. But you guys mentioned it. I mean, Brock Purdy, 3 interceptions. It's statistically for this season, I want to say his yards went down quite a bit, but as far as as far as his touchdowns and yards, it went down, but his completion percentage went up. And it's tough saying whether he had a better year or not, but those are just like that Oklahoma game and then that Baylor game. It really, really hurt. I mean, it cost us in the Oklahoma game, and Baylor it almost cost us. So, going into next year, we'll see if he can improve upon and kind of be our go-to guy instead of Brees. But talking more about that Oregon game, why do you guys think that we dominated them, in such a handily fashion?
So I think we dominated them in the trenches. We were definitely a way more physical team than Oregon, and the time of possession for Iowa State was almost 3 full quarters, which is just insane. It was like 42 or 43 minutes, and you're not going to win many games when your time of possession is a little over a quarter. Outran them 228 to 86. Oregon was 0 for 6 on third down, 0 for 1 on fourth down. They had 4 turnovers. Iowa State has 0. And I would say this was a game this year where it actually felt like Iowa State had a clear talent advantage at possibly every single position. And I think part of that was Oregon kind of lucked out. They got to play in the Pac-12 championship because of Washington's COVID problems, and they were able to upset a good USC team, and they got ranked. They were barely ranked, but they got ranked 25th because of that. But I just think it really showed that they didn't belong in the top 25. And I'm not taking away from Iowa State's win because they just dominated that game. They deserved to win that game. But it was also against an Oregon team that I think kind of got lucky in that Pac-12 championship, and then just got really Iowa State was just more physical and a way better team in that bowl game.
I agree with Aaron. I think Iowa State was very physical that game. And a few reasons why we dominated Oregon was, first off, vengeance. That loss against Oklahoma hurt and did not reflect well on our season at all. The team needed to display their true ability, which they did. They clicked on both sides of the ball and had momentum for the whole game. And like you said, they had possession for 42 minutes. Also, like you said, Aaron, Oregon played literally half of a regular season for their season. Don't get me wrong, they're obviously a well-rounded, talented team. However, they really, if you think about it, they were not supposed to be in the Fiesta Bowl, let alone their conference championship, because too many players on Washington tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, and I think if you look at statistically, they had 6 games, and out of those 6 games, it was only one of them, they held their opponents to under 30 points. So we definitely knew that we could trust in our offense to score a lot of points, and we did. Over 200 rushing yards, 136 rushing yards from Brees, and 2 touchdowns. Brock Purdy didn't really have a great passing game, but he was still able to get a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown, and our defense stepped up. Mike Rowe's interception definitely took advantage of the sudden QB change, which I still question, didn't really know what was going on. I mean, they were really hyping up like all week that it was 2 Arizona quarterbacks that faced each other in high school, and but our defense and the offense definitely took care of things in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, all great points, but let's give credit to Iowa State where credit is due. I mean, tied for the most wins in a season they've ever had, first New Year's Six Bowl, first conference championship title game. You know, this is a team that we haven't ever seen, and it hasn't been 20 years, it hasn't been 30 years. We've never seen an Iowa State team like this. Now, what do you guys think that was so different about this team that we've never had in previous years, other than, you know, the talent and stuff like that?
Really finishing down the stretch. I mean, that Oklahoma game hurt and the Louisiana game hurt early in the season. And also, I think Oklahoma State was a winnable game, but there wasn't really a signature game this year down the stretch where you were just kind of like Iowa State really just kind of let that one go. I think Oklahoma was just the better team on that day. Oklahoma State was the better team on that day, and they straight up got beat. They didn't really give it away. I think they just got beat. And yeah, that's the main thing, because these Iowa State teams in the past, even last year, they ended up going 7-6 and just weren't able to finish down the stretch. And it's the first time, lost to Washington State, got blown out by Notre Dame, and we were actually able to win a bowl game this year. And like you said, this is a team we've never seen before, and finishing was a huge part of that.
So this is Matt Campbell's 5th season at Iowa State, which means, I mean, every single player on the team were his players, his signees. And so I think over time, the chemistry is built up. And I mean, this year we had an incredible ground game courtesy of Brees Hall.
Yeah, and I think what Matt Campbell brings in is confidence to the culture of Iowa State. I mean, after that Oklahoma game, I don't think the players would ever go into a game, and certainly not the fans thinking that we were going to lose, even with comeback wins against Baylor. And then the next week we beat Kansas State 45-0, which for a long time, Kansas State record-wise was on top of the Big 12. It was really just big statement wins that boosted our confidence and really just never put us in a dark spot.
Yeah, I mean, the chemistry this year was just on another level. It was like even when we had bad games, I didn't like, you still saw kind of like the people on Twitter and stuff being dumb, but just like for the most part, it seemed like we were really just united this year. And I think, we just got to give credit to Campbell and, everybody that's been here for the ride and hasn't transferred when we had down years. I mean, Campbell has really built this program into a national contender, and hopefully not just next year, we can see that down the line. But, I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier a little bit, moving on here. Brock Purdy, had a couple of bad games, threw 3 interceptions against Baylor and in Oklahoma. But did you guys think he played to expectations this year, or a little bit of a letdown? What did you guys think there?
So, I mean, he definitely had his ups and downs. That Baylor game, the first half of that Baylor game, and the Big 12 championship game too. But he also had games like the bowl game where his stats maybe weren't that flashy, but he made all the right plays in the Fiesta Bowl. And I think that's kind of the player that he is. He's maybe not always going to go out there and just win the game by himself, but when he gets knocked down, he always gets back up. And I think that's admirable about Brock Purdy. But it was definitely his worst season so far in college. He had his best completion percentage, but worst QB rating, worst yards per completion. And despite COVID, they played 13 games last year and 12 this year, so the amount of games wasn't really that huge of a factor. And I think part of it has to do with the change in identity for Iowa State. They went to more of a running team this year with Breece Hall leading the NCAA in rushing yards. Last year, Purdy threw 475 passes. This year, he threw 365, but he still had the same amount of interceptions as last year with 9. So hopefully going into his senior year next year, he can just kind of clean things up and become less mistake prone, because he does have some interceptions and some throws from time to time where you just kind of shake your head and, maybe just throw it out of bounds instead, or even take the sack. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of outside factors going on this year, and he's still a winner. His entire career at Iowa State, he's been a winner. And even when he has a bad half or a bad quarter, I don't think I can honestly say he's had a bad game in his career. He's always found a way to come back and show that he really plays hard for this school, and that's why the fan base loves him. And I'm excited to see how he does next year.
Totally, Aaron. I wouldn't say it was a letdown year, but he didn't play up to his expectations. I mean, early on in the season, you always hear talk about Brock Purdy potentially being a Heisman contender. Anyway, granted, there was a high level of uncertainty of the structure of the season in the early fall, which ultimately led to momentum shifts, I think. The first game of the season had 0 fans, and Iowa State lost. I'm a firm believer that although this was a real season on paper, it was definitely not authentic. Yes, fans were allowed in the stadium, but even at the sole game I attended, I didn't feel a sense of those classic Jack Trice Stadium games. And I mean, going back to Oregon, you can't tell me honestly that this year college football was authentic when they qualified for their conference championship due to Washington lacking active players. They made it to the Fiesta Bowl with a 6-game season. That does not feel authentic, but it counts. Put everything in the record books.
Yeah, and I agree with what Aaron said. I mean, yes, Brock Purdy only played 1 less game, but you're not going to try and tell me that in 1 game he's going to throw 1,000 more yards and 100 more passes to match what he had last year. And I really just think that he just had to play a different role this season than he was used to, not airing out the ball as much, learning from his mistakes, kind of taking a backseat, being a game manager. And I think that was very important for the offense to succeed. And like you said, Aaron, he's a winner and trying to keep that winning culture. And I think whatever comes next, I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think all you guys made excellent points. But, I mean, what you said, Logan, was what I was going to say. Because it's like, people don't really realize that we couldn't have Hall if Purdy didn't, take a little bit of a step back, and just like adjusting to a completely different role. Maybe not necessarily a whole new offense, but just not necessarily having that playmaking structure that you had before. Just changes the way you kind of play, and maybe sometimes that led to some Purdy's mistakes. But he played excellent for the most part, and why the stats may not be there, I think people are definitely still happy that he's going to be around next year, hopefully. So. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully, we get a full season. But in this shortened year, not much for Iowa State, but what did you guys think? Who the most impressive players were? One offense, one defense, maybe a special teamer in there. What do you guys think?
So offense, it's definitely Breece Hall. Almost 1,600 yards, which led the NCAA, 23 total touchdowns, almost 6 yards per carry. And he did all of this as a sophomore. I think we were all expecting him to take a step forward this better, but I'm not going to lie and say I expected him to be this good this year. And it was a very pleasant surprise that our sophomore running back was able to lead the team the way he did. And like you said, Purdy took kind of a step back, but I thought the offense was actually more well-rounded this year than it was in years past. And then for defense, we had a lot of players that have already been impressive when we kind of knew who they were, in Mike Rose, Greg Eisworth, and Jaquan Bailey. So I'm actually going to go with Aisheem Young for who impressed me the most. A freshman who looked like he'd been playing with those guys for 4 years already. And he was just a really steady presence in the secondary back there with Greg Eisworth, who's also going to be back next season. And he's just really everything you want in a safety. He's a hard hitter. He puts a lot of fear in the offense, and he always made the right play. And I can't really think of a play this year where he made a glaring mistake that led to a big touchdown or a big gain. And it was just a pretty mistake-free freshman season for him, which you can't say about very many players. And then for special teams, I would say Rory Walling and Landon Akers definitely. Landon Akers definitely seemed like the guy who was just always there to make a play, whether it was on offense sometimes, but, on special teams, had a blocked punt. He's just one of those guys who's worked hard for a really long time, and it was cool to see him get his first touchdown this year in like a decade at Iowa State. And also Rory Walling just making the right plays too, made a lot of good plays on kickoff coverage and punt coverage. And, Iowa State wouldn't have had the season they had if it weren't for players that don't put up a lot of stats but just do all the right things like those two do.
Most impressive player, Breece the Beast. I'm not going to elaborate on him that much because we've talked about him in nearly every episode. But the dude put up record numbers this season and averaged over 140 yards a game. On defense, I'm going to go with Jaquan Bailey in his returning season after his injury last year. He's easily one of the best defensive players in the Big 12, and his physicality and stats show that he's the most impressive player on defense.
I agree with all you guys. I mean, Breece Hall had a great year this year. Definitely took that step forward. Mike Rose, loved watching him play on the defense every game. But I would say offensively, I was very impressed with Charlie Kolar. The stats always don't jump out to you per game, but at the end of the year, over 500 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. I think he fits very well with the kind of play action role with Brock Purdy. Loved kind of seeing that in the red zone. And then defensively, Jaquan Bailey, I was very impressed with, his upperclassman mentality, getting those sacks, and just overall having a great time out there. And special teams, I mean, I personally sometimes was very nervous when Connor Asali went out there, but I was very impressed with him, and he didn't really have to kick too many field goals, but I think kudos to him sticking it out, and I'm pretty sure he was on scholarship this year, so good job to him, and glad he was our kicker for the most part.
Yeah, guys. Okay, Breece Hall, phenomenal season. He's not doing it without the O-line. Give the big boys some credit. Come on. And also, I just actually found this. We only allowed 16 sacks in 12 games. I was kind of jogging back my memory a little bit. I'm like, God, I don't think Purdy was really sacked that much. And, I mean, according to that statistic, we had one of the best O-lines that played 12 games. in the season. Obviously, I mean, there's going to be teams that allow less sacks and less games. But I think we just got to give them credit as a whole unit because they really did a phenomenal job. And without them, Brees doesn't have that success. And, the offense doesn't enjoy the season they had. But defensively, I mean, yeah, we brought up Jaquan Bailey, NFL draft prospects. He's getting, 7 sacks. But, Will McDonald, 10.5 sacks. Man, my man's eating. And I swear, he had at least 5 times a game where he got held too. So we're just going to ignore that. But Will McDonald, phenomenal player. He's going to be another guy really to watch next year. And if he doesn't go to the draft, even the year after that. So McDonald, huge name on defense along with, everybody else we really mentioned, impact players. We're not losing much going to the draft. Really, just Dylan Soner, and I'm missing a few other guys, but none of our huge NFL draft guys. So, yeah. And going off that, what do you guys think the team's going to be like next year? What's our record going to be? You guys got our prediction for a bowl game? What do you think?
So I think we should go 3-0 non-conference against UNI, Iowa, and UNLV. Yes, I think Matt Campbell should get his first win against Iowa next year. I think the program is finally past the point of finding new ways to lose to Iowa every single year. And I actually think they'll get a statement win against Iowa next year, to be honest. But other than that, there's probably going to be a loss in there somewhere, whether it's Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, or Texas. I don't know. But I think 11-1 is a very realistic prediction for next year. And there's a lot of, way too early rankings coming out. Everyone has Iowa State in the top 10. I've seen some rankings have them 6th, some rankings have them 9th. But if you're going to be ranked in the top 10, you should only lose 1 or 2 games. I expect another Big 12 championship appearance, probably against Oklahoma again. And I don't know exactly what bowl game, but I also expect another New Year's Six bowl out of this Iowa State team. Maybe even a college football playoff appearance. I don't know. We'll see.
15-0 with a natty. I definitely see where you're coming from here, and I think 11-1 is a very reasonable expectation with this team and the talent that we have. And next year will be a normal year where we can have tens of thousands of fans in Jack Trice Stadium. But no, yeah, I think there's going to be a game. There's going to be kind of a game along the line where we won't win, and no, I can see them being in a New Year's Six bowl for sure, winning the Big 12 championship. I mean, you made a good statement earlier about Oklahoma becoming a better team. But yeah, no, I think I think it's necessary to have high expectations for Iowa State next year and to be contenders for the college football playoff.
I think going into this offseason, Matt Campbell is going to kind of divide it into goals and expectations. So obviously the goal is the college football playoffs, going 15-0 or just dropping a game. The expectations are beat Iowa at home and not lose more than 2 games overall, get a New Year's Six bowl game, and be right back where we were in the Big 12 championship. And I also think that Oklahoma, they're just going to get better. As much as I hate to say it, Spencer Rattler is their quarterback for the next few years, and they're going to be in the Big 12 championship for the next 2-3 years. But Iowa State's going to be right there with them, and I'm excited for a new year.
This is Cyclone InCYders, guys. We're supposed to say they're always going to go undefeated. No, I'm just kidding. I think I agree with you guys. Realistically, if we just run it back like we did this year, I'd say that's a success. Some people around Ames here and Iowa State fans may disagree with that statement. But just with, Oklahoma improving and just after all being Iowa State, are we ever really going to be, that natty team? I mean, we saw how hard it is for those big name schools not to get into the top 4. So it's really hard. And it's going to take a long time for us to get, it's almost like another level. Like, we're a great, phenomenal team right now, but I mean, top 4, I mean, your whole team's, there's 5 stars sitting on the bench. Like, it's just outstanding what Alabama, their team has. So, we got another tier to get, but let's just enjoy the ride while it lasts, and we're praying for a great year next year. But that's going to end it for our covering the football year. We'll definitely have some NFL draft stuff coming up, kind of going over those guys that graduated or aren't going to be coming back. We're also probably going to go over maybe like a team preview type thing. But stay tuned. We'll be coming back with men's and women's basketball next on Cyclone InCYders. Welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. Well, guys, we tried to maintain the positivity for a little bit at least, but now we got to get into the deep, dark spots of the Iowa State sports here. Iowa State men's basketball, yikes. 2-10, 0-9 in conference play. We haven't won we might not win a conference game. And I mean, we've seen it bad. A couple years ago when Lindell was out there just, dribbling around by himself, it's even worse. It's miserable out here. Yeah, I guess to start, guys, are we going to win a conference game? I mean, we almost did yesterday against TCU. Is there a game we're going to win, like, soon, sometime, eventually?
So, I mean, we're really bad. Like, we're as bad as you think we are. Like, we're that bad. And if they're going to get one, it's probably going to be TCU last game of the season. They got close last night and just lost by 3, and really the end of the game was kind of disappointing. Just didn't have much of a direction there at the end. But they've been in some really close games lately against some ranked teams, and they just keep falling short, just unable to finish. And I feel bad because the players out there are clearly fighting, but just not good enough, and this team just doesn't really have an identity like we got so used to with Iowa State for so many years, which I honestly think is one of the identifying things under Steve Prohm. I think the last time we even had any semblance of an identity was like with Shayok and THT. But yeah, just if we're gonna get one, it's gonna be TCU. I don't know how optimistic I am about that, but yeah, not winning a conference game is very realistic.
Well, for sure, yeah. I like to consider myself an optimist, but we're a bad team. It's as simple as that. We haven't won a conference game. We're 0-9. We lost to Iowa by 28 points, and we clearly aren't finishing games. But I agree with Aaron. I think TCU, if we're going to win a conference game, it's going to be against TCU.
Yeah, and unfortunately, once you get behind in the Big 12 and you start playing a little bit lackluster, both offense and defense, there's no way of coming back. And like you guys have been saying, TCU is our last chance. And really, who knows about that one? It's almost just up in the air. And at that point, we might just get blown out. It's been a bad year for Iowa State basketball.
I mean, we stayed within 6 to Texas, only lost by 11 to Baylor. Like, it's not so bad, guys, right? No, it's a bad season, but to move on to a little bit of positivity, is there a bright spot you guys see in this team? Is there anybody that you think is playing above expectations, I guess?
I mean, Rasir Bolton is kind of inefficient sometimes, but he's been putting the team on his back all season. And he's a really good scorer. There's some things he could do to round out his game better, but he's a solid player. Solomon Young is still doing his thing for the most part. And I think since Jaden Walker started getting more minutes, he's looked like a pretty solid freshman. He's a pretty under control point guard. And he had one game with 6 turnovers, but that's going to happen from time to time as a freshman. But other than that, Xavier Foster had season-ending surgery, and I'm honestly curious what Xavier Foster's mindset and perspective is on the program right now, just, the season following the commitment and comparing how Iowa's doing right now. And other players have had good games here and there, but there's just no real consistency or chemistry, it feels like. So hopefully some of those freshmen come back next year, decide not to transfer and things like that, and we can see some more bright spots next year. But for now, it's really just a couple players who we already knew were solid coming into the year, just continuing to play solid, but I haven't really seen anyone new step up.
I'm sorry, Logan, do you want to go?
No, you can go. You're good.
Like I previously said, the season is real, but it's not authentic. There's a couple hundred fans in Hilton Coliseum, and I think we all know what home magic is like, right? But I'm not sure what we could do. We're in the bottom third for the NCAA in assists, points per game, and rebounds per game. The team simply is just isn't good. And we're 385th in rebounds per game. How? Don't know. It's just bad.
And looking more at the stats and towards the future, 3 out of our 4 guys that are averaging double-digit points are juniors. So a little bit of development in the offseason. And plus, like you mentioned, Aaron, we do have a fairly young squad. So I think, if our upperclassmen can kind of get more into the culture that we've seen in the past, we can kind of teach that to the freshmen and sophomores and get, this program back to what it's used to be.
Yeah, I mean, guys, like I watched the game, not the TCU one, but the one before that, and everybody just wants to shoot threes. We just stand around the perimeter, we just chuck, and what are we shooting, like 30% on the year? Like it's really unbelievable. There's just like no rhythm on offense. One player that I think is doing decent is Jalen Coleman Lance. I mean, not just because he's the best shooter, but sometimes it's like Aaron kind of touched on a little bit. Rasir, I mean, athletically, he's phenomenal. I mean, he's definitely, when you watch an Iowa State game, you're like, oh, he's the one guy that sticks out at you. But, sometimes he's just a little inefficient. His shot IQ is not always there. And sometimes it's like he's trying to just do a little too much. And he's not necessarily the best distributor either. So when the ball's always in his hands, it's like he's kind of clogging up things. But Coleman Lands has kind of been a nice secondary piece, but probably not going to have him back next year. So it's just like, it's almost making a decision of whether we got to play the young guys and just let them get experience, or we just play like the older guys. But if we just play the young guys and all the older guys get pissed and they want to leave, so it's like, I don't know what the solution is. We're not here to answer those questions. We're just here to criticize them. But perhaps the person taking the most criticism, Steve Prohm. Guys, does he deserve to come back next season?
So you basically have to decide if you want Tyrese Hunter, who is the 37th ranked player coming out of high school next year, and also if you want to let go of the guy who brought in Xavier Foster, who's brought in players in the past like Halliburton, Wigginton, THT. But and also if you want to give him a pass for the circumstances of this season. But honestly, in my perspective, I think it's time to move on. Since the last Hoiberg guys moved on from Iowa State, the team has had a real identity problem, and there's been players leaving for the NBA every year. Prohm has recruited well, but nothing's really come out of it. And even before this year with COVID, Hilton Magic has been dead for a while. Like for 2 or 3 years, Hilton Magic just hasn't been the same. And it's honestly gotten to the point where Prohm is a great guy, just maybe not that great of a coach. And I feel like he's had enough time to really establish an identity with Iowa State, and it just hasn't happened.
Yeah, this is a bittersweet subject because when I attended the Iowa State basketball camp as an 8th grader, he made his first appearance in Cyclone gear. I mean, my teenage years were spent watching his Iowa State teams followed up on ESPN. I'd certainly hate to see him go, but like you said, Aaron, it may be necessary at this point. I mean, I don't recall Iowa State basketball looking this ugly in my lifetime. Given the fact that this is in the regular season, I think you can make the argument that he deserves another season. However, you could also make the argument that termination is necessary as he's had more than enough time to build an identity at Iowa State.
Yeah, like you were saying, Max, I think he's definitely he's had a couple years on his belt, and hasn't really shown us a lot. Now, the joke is that we are still technically defending Big 12 champions, but I think that with his development, I think like you were saying, he's recruited well, and if you look at his past, his last year at Murray State was filled with a big squad of upperclassmen, and I think if we give him maybe 1 or 2 more years to develop the guys he's brought in, maybe we can see some development. This year obviously hasn't been great for his record and showing us that, but I think he could use another year or 2.
I mean, for me, like, I think he should maybe get a COVID pass. Like it's even affected Iowa State where we missed 2 weeks, and it's just like it's not necessarily a real season. Yeah, we're still losing games, but it's just like it's tough to do these things and be able to develop players when you're missing practices and guys aren't able to play, and then it just gets your rhythm all out of check. It's like it's tough, but you can definitely see Iowa State's on a downward trajectory, and like Aaron brought up, we got a great recruit coming in. It's just whether we can capitalize on it because we've seen these 4-star guys come into Iowa State and just Prom hasn't been able to capitalize. I mean, Foster, he looked not like a 4-star out there when he was playing, and even the guys that we recruited for this year aren't playing up to their standards. So it's just like I say we let him go next year, or not let him go. We keep him for next year and then reevaluate and see where we're at. I mean, if we're still going to be at the bottom of the Big 12, then let him go. But, yeah. What do you guys just – it's so much needs to change, I know, but if you could point out one thing, what do you think would needs to change the most about what you're seeing right now from Iowa State?
So I have two quick things. So we need to start recruiting the right players, not necessarily because one of my criticisms of Prom – he's gone after high recruits, but there hasn't been a consistent trend with like them fitting into a system or anything. It's just whatever high recruits he can get. And the thing with Hoiberg is you always felt like there was a rhyme and a reason to his recruiting. And I haven't really seen that with Prom. And then also just need to make Hilton Magic a thing again and make the fans care again. Because unfortunately, a lot of fans are pretty apathetic about Iowa State basketball right now. And that connection hasn't really been there for the past few years. Even when there was players like THT and Halliburton and Wigginton, there wasn't just like a whole squad that you felt like, this team is magical. When I go to Hilton, I feel like any night there could be Hilton Magic. Iowa State just hasn't had that. So I think those are really the two big things to changing Iowa State basketball around.
Yeah, I agree with you, Aaron. I think Prom has recruited a lot of 1 to 2 year guys, and it's not really establishing a team chemistry by getting recruits that want to stay and build the program. I mean, right now we have the talent to win games, but we aren't necessarily executing. But yeah, no, I certainly think it's the coaching that needs to be modified.
Yeah, and going off of what you were saying, Max, I mean, move the ball around. I mean, we shouldn't have to rely on Bolton to be our leading scorer every game. I mean, yeah, every team has that it guy or the one guy, but I mean, if we look at him statistically, 29% from the three, and as a team, we're shooting in 34%. I just think don't make the offense too complicated. Pick and roll, screens, just move the ball around more, and I think if we see that change, we'll get some of that Hilton magic back and really just have a better squad on the floor every time.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned what I would change the most about the team right now. Like, we just chuck the ball up right away in the shot clock. Like, just be a little more patient on offense and get some better looks. I mean, these players aren't NBA talent where they can just ISO, boom, bam, pull up. Like, we got to move the ball around, get open shots, get it inside, kick it out, like just stuff like that. But yeah, Iowa State, even though they're struggling, what makes this season even worse as an Iowa State fan is we're seeing Iowa kill it over there. Just, oh, yeah, guys, they're one of the best teams in the nation, and I know they've lost 4 out of the last 5. Actually, when we're recording this, they just beat Rutgers for a little bit of bounce back. But, guys, is Iowa really that good, or is it just because, like, we're so bad that they're like, oh, yeah, guys, we're going Final Four and all this stuff? What do you guys think?
I don't think they're that great, honestly. I think they're a solid squad, but what are they now, like 13-6, 14-6? That's nothing that crazy. And I'm not trying to be a hater. Like, Luka Garza is incredible, but if you watch their games, their defense can be pretty atrocious at times. And, I mean, they gave up like 77 points to Iowa State, which I think is the most points. It was a blowout, but I think that's still the most points Iowa State has scored this season, which is pretty sad when, we've seen how Iowa State is this year. And we'll see how the rest of the season goes, but it feels like every time Iowa's had a pretty good team under McCaffrey, they kind of just fade away down the stretch in the end, leading up to March Madness. And can't talk much crap about them because of the state of Iowa State basketball. And I think it's kind of unfortunate that Iowa State isn't good because then Luka Garza would actually be kind of a villain and I'd be able to hate on him. But now I'm just kind of like, damn, like he's just a good player. I can't even hate on him. And I just miss the days when I could hate like Aaron White and Mike Gazelle and Aaron Woodbury and all those guys. But yeah, they're kind of giving me round of 32 exit vibes. We'll see if they're able to clean up some of their problems. But yeah, I'm not a firm believer in this Iowa squad, not yet.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in some aspects, Aaron. They were 13-6, and that's nothing too special. But they did absolutely dominate Iowa State. What was it, 28 point by 20? They won by 28 points. So yeah, I think Iowa's pretty good. I mean, they're in the top 5 for points and assists per game, and have arguably one of the best players in the nation, Luka Garza.
Yeah, and I think as a team, as a whole, not looking at them as a Big Ten team, they definitely do stand out. Luka Garza is an amazing player, but if you look really at the Big Ten this year, they have been playing amazing. I mean, they've got at least 5 teams ranked in there, and I think they just some of the games they drop, like a game to Indiana. I mean, you can't drop those, and in the conference right now. So now they'll be 8-5 with that win against Rutgers, but I think it's really important for them to finish out the schedule and kind of prove themselves as the big dogs that they want to be in the top 10. I think hopefully it hit them that they dropped, I believe it was 7 spots after they lost to Indiana. If you want to play like a Big Ten team and be in the top 10, you got to prove yourself.
Guys, Iowa's offense is everything I want Iowa State's offense to be. Why can't we just have like one of the best player in the nation, arguably? But here's the thing, and this is not bias speaking 100%. What happens to great offensive teams when you get in March Madness and it's one game elimination? If you have one bad night, you can get knocked off by anybody. And unfortunately, I think that's just going to be the truth with Iowa. So they're either going to be able to go Final Four if they somehow just don't miss a shot, or it could be an early exit. So it's really hard to say with this team. But when you got Luka Garza, it's definitely going to give you a fighting chance. So it'll be interesting to see them kind of enjoy their success. But it sucks that Iowa State isn't. So moving on, women's basketball on the other hand, doing a little bit better. They were just outside the top 25 in the last poll, had 9 votes. We do have a superstar on the women's team, Ashley Jones, averaging over 23 points a game. What do you guys think the women's basketball team would be without her?
I mean, I think definitely under 500. She's been pretty insane, and they have some solid players. Kristen Scott. The freshmen have been getting better as the season goes on. Players like Ray Johnson, who have fit well into this Iowa State squad their entire career. But yeah, she is the star of the show. And if you watch games where she's been a little bit of foul trouble, like I went to the most recent game against Texas, and Ashley Jones she played like 18 minutes in that game and scored 19 points or something like that, got in some foul trouble. And when she was off the floor, it was just like that offense was a black hole for the most part. And so yeah, it's kind of a Luka Garza situation with this Iowa State women's basketball team is that supporting cast going to be able to step up more as the season goes on and help them hopefully make a run in the tourney would be nice to see from this women's team. And I think Bill Fennelly, we just got done talking about Steve Prohm, but Fennelly's been at this for a long time, and I think this is a team that does have an identity. So yeah, I'm excited to see, and Ashley Jones is a really exciting player to watch.
Yeah, no, and in the grand scheme of things, Aaron, I think the team would be a lot less dominant. I mean, she's 8th in the nation for points and leads the team in rebounds with 130, while the next player in line has 80. She also leads the team in offensive rebounds, and it's easy to say she's a well-rounded player. She stepped up to the plate this past year under her predecessor, Bridget Carleton. And she has now proved herself as one of the nation's elites.
Yeah, backing off of what you were saying, Aaron, I mean, the record would not be as good as it is now as packed as it is. I think late into games she gives the team a lead, and she can kind of go back on the bench and kind of develop the supporting cast, which will be important for the future, whether that be the NCAA tournament or just next season. But I think her game has really showed her leadership in what she's learned in NCAA hoops so far.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is Ashley Jones, phenomenal player, still has another year left in his Cyclone jersey. I mean, she could realistically be another WNBA player, which is, I mean, it blows my mind that we're not only churning out NBA players, well, not anymore, but we did a couple years ago, and now we got women's players in the NBA. It's really just Iowa State basketball as a whole is making a name for themselves. But we kind of touched on a little bit. The freshmen, they've been a little on and off. Do you guys think they're playing well according to their high 4- and 5-star rankings? I mean, this was the best recruiting class Fennelly's arguably ever had. How do you guys think they're adjusting to the college game?
So there's definitely been some growing pains, and they've had their good games and their bright spots. Hopefully next year they'll take an even bigger step forward and be more involved in the offense. They've been a good job of distributing, but there's not really many other players on the team that you think when the ball is in Ashley Jones' hands, you're going to get a bucket on offense. And like I said, there's been some players, like I know Donarski had a game where she made 7 threes or something like that, and they've had their games. But if Iowa State's going to consistently be top 25 and hopefully next year with the players coming back be like a top 15 team the entire season, some of these players are going to have to be more of a scoring threat on offense and not rely so much on Ashley Jones.
Yeah, I think they're adjusting well. I mean, Donarski leads the team in 3-pointers made. I think her shooting game is translating well. And then Donarski and Ryan are in the top 5 within the team for rebounds. And Emily Ryan is easily a defensive asset to this team with 16 blocks and 13 steals on the season. As far as Donarski and Ryan go, I think they are exceeding their high school rating. They're playing exceptionally well for freshmen, whereas Kylie Feuerbach is just a step behind those two. However, I believe she's on the right track for improvement given the leadership on the team.
Yeah, and I mean, it's easy to set those high standards for the high-rated girls there, but I think a word that keeps get tossed around is developing well, which is what you want to see from a freshman. I mean, like you said, John, there are some nights, a little off and on, underwhelming play, but for the most part, I think that they're adjusting to college basketball. It is their first year, and when they have games like 7 3-pointers or just getting into the double digits, playing a key role in the offense and the defense, I think we should be very impressed with them as basketball fans.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Not only that we got them here at Iowa State, but that they're flourishing in a role, kind of like understanding, Ashley's a superstar, and we just got to be able to knock down shots and play defense next to her. Is just something that, is great to see as a Cyclone fan. And something important to point out is Iowa State, they've been doing this without one of their better scorers. Maggie Espen-Miller-McGraw has only played 9 games this season, and in those 9 games, she's 14 for 29 from the 3-point line with 48%. I mean, just think if she was out there. I mean, they're double teaming Ashley Jones, kicking out to her, and she's a 1 out of 2 chance of making the shot. I mean, that's a crazy that they've been without her, and I think if she comes back, you could see this team being more dangerous than they are. But at this point, they're 8-4, tough Big 12 conference, arguably the best in women's college basketball. Where do you guys think they will finish? In the past years, they've kind of been around that 4-5 range, so just kind of keep that in mind.
So, I mean, looking at the rest of the season, they have TCU, Kansas, Oklahoma State should all be wins. And then West Virginia's last game of the season, they're currently ranked 19th. They lost to West Virginia by 9 just last week, I believe. So should go 3-1 the rest of the season. Ideally, finish 11-5 in conference and slot in. Hopefully, maybe even in a 2 or 3 spot in the Big 12. But yeah, just a 3-1 finish to the season should be expected for this team.
Yeah, I agree with you, Aaron. I think we have a good shot at clinching a few of the next games. But I think we'll fall third or fourth in line, my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, Max and Aaron. I mean, 15 ending in that 15-9 range would be pretty impressive. Getting a couple spots up in the rankings, Big 12 wise, that'd be very nice. But who knows? Maybe season finale against what was it? West Virginia, or yeah, West Virginia. We can pull something out there. Maybe move to 16-8.
Yeah, I would agree with you guys. I think probably 4 seed is what's going to happen for them. But with all that, do you guys think this is an NCAA tournament team? Are we going to get to see at least one of our teams in the NCAA postseason?
Right now, I think, yeah. If they finish fourth, maybe fifth in a very, very tough conference and hopefully play good down the stretch, like you said, Logan, maybe get a win against West Virginia. That would make the resume look even better. But hopefully just going 3-1 down the stretch, because there's 3 games they should win coming up before that West Virginia game. Yeah, I think they slot in right in the NCAA tournament picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Given their talent, stats, and placement in their current standing in one of college basketball's elite conferences, I definitely think they deserve a bid.
Yeah, and I mean, each game, they keep themselves in there. They play competitively, and I think they're definitely playing like an NCAA caliber team and just great team overall. And I'm sure we'll see them make some noise in the first couple rounds, and who knows after that.
Yeah, I got ESPN's bracketology pulled up here. They got Iowa State at a 7 seed, but something I found more interesting is Oklahoma State, who's currently above them in the Big 12. They're 10-4 in conference play. They got them at a 10 seed. So I think just like the committee knows a little bit that Iowa State has the potential to be something more. And when you got Ashley Jones on your side, I mean, everybody wants to see her play. So that's only going to help Iowa State's seeding, I think. And hopefully, we can see them in the tournament and flourish well, because we're definitely not going to with the men. But we'll make sure to keep you tuned on how the women's and men's basketball seasons finishes. But for now, that's going to be it on Cyclone InCYders. See ya.